Hello, and welcome to this episode of It's Not You, but Sometimes It Is. And I am absolutely thrilled to have been able to have this conversation with Bonnie Thompson, the COO of Forest Family Dentistry. She shared a lot of wisdom about kind of the real work of aligning a dental practice and all the people within a dental practice to really grow and thrive and provide incredible quality services. I know that you're going to love her authenticity and the wisdom she shares from all the hard lessons learned in the School of Hard Knocks. I know you'll enjoy the episode. Welcome. Welcome to this episode of It's Not You, but Sometimes It Is, the podcast where real leaders talk about the real crap we've faced. And Bonnie Thompson, no exception to that. I'm so excited for this conversation. Bonnie, you are the COO of Forest Family Dentistry. Really interesting, cool background. Thank you so much for being with us today.
Thank you for having me.
So, Bonnie, can you give us a little bit of a feel for kind of how you got into the role you're in and like why COO? How did this happen?
My journey is kind of awesome and unique. In high school, thought I wanted to go into business and accounting, but I'd gone to my guidance counselor and asked if they had any insights into any jobs that were available because I was tired of babysitting for the entire community. And she pointed me in the direction of a dental office, and I thought I would just go in and file charts and things. But what I found is I was sitting chairside, learning to suction and assist with patients in high school. And it was game changing for me, although I don't think I realized that it would end up being my life's career at that point. I thought that this was just going to be a part-time thing. But what I realized is I could go to school for accounting, understand business, and really engage with the clinical side of dentistry. And over the last 30 years, been able to blend them together. I've hopped around. I've jumped into every role in the dental field except for the dentist and the hygienist. I've been every clinical position in the company, including sterile tech. I've been human resources, office manager, operations. I've trained across the country. So just gravitating into this role where I am now at Forest Family, I get to partner with the owner to bring his vision to life. And I get to meet with every team member on our team. I can speak their language. And so because I've been in most of those roles, I can easily just explain this is where we're going with our vision and our goals for the company. And this is how you're an important person in that part.
Yeah, awesome. So that's something that I've seen Bonnie a lot with the COO role in particular is tends to be the Swiss Army knife of professionals. Like done a lot of different things. We can understand a lot of perspectives within a company and come in and align things, solve problems to get to that vision. So
Yeah.
what makes Ford Family Dentistry unique as far as like, I go to a dentist, it's one dentist with a couple hygienists. I think it's a
Yeah.
typical scene. Y'all have multiple locations. Like, what are you doing? How are you growing? How is that working?
It's pretty interesting. Dr. Bethel started Forest Family in 2012, and I've asked him numerous times, like, did you anticipate growing and having multiple locations? And he's told me he didn't initially plan on it. He just kind of outgrew his space. He was able to do something very successfully with an office, and he had multiple doctors wanting to work with him. And because of that, you couldn't grow the footprint in one location. So he started branching out and opening several more. And now we're up to 5 locations. We have close to 100 employees, 16 full-time doctors. So it's a very robust group, but it tends to bring in some quality candidates.
Yeah, that's a unique story
Yeah.
for dentistry. So, what about you? And I guess you've played every role, but you've been
Hmm.
in this sector of dentistry for a very long time. Like you've seen it from
Yes.
all the angles, but you're deep in. So talk about there's interesting dynamics in the medical field and healthcare.
Yeah.
So talk about some of the really challenging, difficult things y'all have faced as you've been growing, either kind of just talent and people issues, friction, any problem that your butt was on the line to figure it out and solve it. Talk about what it was and what you took forward from that.
For me, it was pretty awesome. I mean, again, with my experience over the years, it's been easy to understand that there's so many unique people in our field. There's different generational gaps, there's different learning styles, there's different lifestyle backgrounds. And being able to talk the talk with each one of them, understand how to build training material that meets every individual learning style is huge. And with this particular company, I came in at a time where there was kind of a stagnation, I think. We were coming back from COVID, people learning like the balance between work life, changes in the economy, and just navigate that. And my main goal was to come in and build more trust with the team and make sure that everybody understood where we wanted to go as a company, what our role was, and to make each person on our team feel special in their role. And I think in doing that, that's what gets them all rowing in the same direction.
Yeah, yeah, you've got a unique, you have about as much diversity in a workforce as you can have. Like people with all kinds of backgrounds, educational levels, passions, thinking and learning styles, like you said. So coming in and kind of harnessing all that, I think would be pretty tricky.
Yeah, I mean, we have employees ranging anywhere from age 19 to in their 50s. So again, we bring people in with no experience whatsoever for both front desk, and we can train on the job for dental assistants.
Okay.
And we get people that are coming in for a second career, or they've been a stay-at-home mom for many years, or they just graduated high school, and it's very diverse.
Yeah. Yeah. Very cool. So, um, you clearly have your eye on the people side of things, the talent you're bringing in, how to cultivate excellence, how to help people understand where things are going, how they're important. That old quote, culture eats strategy for breakfast, right? You can have
Yeah.
all the best goals and vision and mission and processes and KPIs and support systems, but the people problems can certainly slow things down.
Oh,
So,
for
do
sure.
you have any examples of that in your experience as you're trying to develop these high performing teams and grow? What has some of that cultural friction been that you've hit?
I think that more specifically, even coming into this role, we were trying to navigate what third-party systems to bring into place, how to create a system for online booking. How does that impact the team? We had a lot of people that were hesitant and skeptical. And then, reteaching them that, yes, we're in a business, but we're in the healthcare business. So what we do every day and talking about profitability or productivity shouldn't be looked at as greed. And I think one of the things that we were able to show the team is through a more robust bonus system, and then also the things that through the success that we gained over my first year with the company, we were able to add more programs and incentives to the team to show them the value of what they created. We're able to add 401k. We were able to add financial counseling services and then increase bonuses for team members so they can see the value.
Okay, cool, cool. Yeah, I think a lot of employers today, the talent war is real, right? It is hard
Oh,
to find and retain talent
yeah,
right now, ever since COVID, basically, right?
yeah,
The tide has turned. And if people don't feel valued and acknowledged, they can go 18 other places and get the same
exactly.
amount of money or maybe a
Yep.
little more, right? So I think companies now are really having to start understanding the value of showing that appreciation and recognition and just like play the human element. It's no longer, you can't just be a business and expect that you're going to be able to draw talent and keep it.
Correct. And it's about trust too. I think employees will see if you're trying to create a fake culture that doesn't really follow the values of the company. And I know a ton of companies that have core values. They're written down in a scratch piece of paper somewhere, or they're in the handbook and nobody ever talks about them. But I think when you really have your core values embedded into what the company is doing every day, we talk about them at least weekly, if not daily.
Mhm.
We make decisions based on them, even as leadership. We always think, is this respectful? Is it compassionate? Is it evidence-based? And those are three of our core values that we make all of our decisions for the company and within the company.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, values, that is their role is to guide our decisions, right? And
Yeah,
guide our decisions in a way that's going to make us successful and actually have, joy and fulfillment at work.
correct.
Yeah, yeah.
It's
So
too long. The days are too long if you don't find any joy in what you're doing.
exactly. Yeah. And dentistry, people beat up on dentists. I heard some
Oh,
statistic that of all the professions, dentists have the highest depression and I think suicide rates. Like,
I
because
don't know if
we're
that's
causing
still
people
true.
pain. But
It's causing people pain. Most people come to the dentist and they say, I don't want to be here,
yeah,
or I'll greet them and say, hey, how's your day today? Well, I'm at the dentist. And I always joke and say, me too. I have to come every day. And granted, I'm not in the chair, but you try to make it light and playful. People, the first things out of their mouth is, I hate the dentist. And we know it's not the person per se, but it's hard not to personalize that.
yeah. I have a good friend who's a math teacher, and he said it's so depressing when people ask, what do you do? And he says, I teach math, and they say, I hate math. It's like all these people just throw back hatred at me for the
Right.
thing that I
Yeah.
love.
I know. It's weird sometimes. Or people will meet me for the first time and say, I have this tooth. And I'm like, okay.
Yeah, it's funny. I have a good friend whose dad has been a dentist forever, and I don't even remember what the dental stuff was, and he started reaching for me to open my mouth up, and my friend was like, Dad, not appropriate. You can't just reach into people's mouths. But
But
I
yes,
think,
we can. Yeah.
yeah, but when you're passionate about your work, right?
It's
It's
true.
like
When you want to help people.
yeah, yeah. So it's hard to be so heart driven in a field where so many people don't want what you have to give, and it's hard. And you have to keep your culture positive around
We
that.
do.
There's gonna be a lot of negativity coming at you when people come in.
Yeah.
Yeah. So um I think one of the most interesting things for me to think about too is, there's so much we can do to support a good culture and help people feel trusted and trust their leaders. There's also a lot we can do to screw that up with
Oh,
with
yeah.
bad leadership. And sometimes we
Hmm.
learn how to lead by watching people really mess it up and those behaviors that we don't want to ever do. So, can you give me an example of what you learned from bad bosses or leaders around you?
Absolutely. I think for me, one of the hardest things in having a leader was a leader that won't listen. Either they're not listening to the company as a whole and they're not willing to see what is really flawed, or the ones that are just power hungry. They're either in it to take all the glory and deflect all the blame. And those have been tough. Those have been tough obstacles to face over time and realize that there was so much more to be had, and it just wasn't possible under that type of leadership.
Yeah, I think, two of the biggest indicators that someone's so full of ego. One is I always need to be right, and two
Hmm.
is I need to play God. Those
Yeah.
are like the two top signs that someone is totally ego driven, and that always leads to bad decisions in leadership.
Oh, I mean, I had one interaction, this one person will say, any interaction that was ever had in the company where there were negatives brought up, the first words out of their mouth were, well, I'm the boss of everybody, right? And I'm thinking, unnecessary, but everybody knows, we know.
We
Pictures
know.
out there. We all get it.
Yeah,
So it was just kind of one of those unnecessary reminders. I think it was probably built in insecurity somewhere,
absolutely.
but it was tough. And I'm like, I'm trying to protect you from that, but that's okay.
Yeah, yeah. And when that is who you have to share space with and who has authority over you, it doesn't matter if it's from their own insecurity. It's horrible to be around, right? It's
It's
like
hard.
it sucks the energy
It really
out of your
does.
day. Yeah, yeah. So, you have had this really cool opportunity to really cultivate high performing teams in an environment that's unique and growing. So, I would love to hear any thoughts you have about some of the biggest challenges that you have faced in just managing people, getting people aligned, and supporting the growth of a unique kind of a practice.
Um, Again, I always start with trust. So coming into my new roles, I will always take time to listen, hear, and understand. Although something may be very different to me or something I've never seen, I will always take the opportunity to understand why it's done that way in the new place and then assess whether or not it's actually working. I think one of the biggest challenges is when I do see something that's not working, but then that's the way we've always done it. and trying to break those habits by showing the alternate opportunities available to doing things better, showing where that will be beneficial, not just to that person, but to the patient, to the team, to the company. And then again, just finding that alignment in everyone. If you have some bad actors in the group that are willing to, muddy the waters a little bit and, say negative things, you really need to get ahead of that and finding opportunities to address it politely, with respect, and go to those people and say, hey, it seems like we're having a hard time aligning on this. I want to understand where your negativity or the hostility is coming from so that we can kind of talk through it before it becomes a bigger problem. I think those are some of the biggest challenges, is just getting everybody to understand, a different philosophy on things.
Yeah. Yeah. It's been interesting to see as the labor market has changed and their demands have gone up as far as
Yeah.
the type of environment that they want to be in, but also sometimes their expectations, they can get a little black and white and rigid. And so we have
Yeah.
to learn how to help show I'm listening to you, I value you, I hear you, and like this is what's going to be best for all of us,
Yeah.
and steer with a lot of grace. And all of that success as a leader, as you say, is based on a foundation of trust. If people don't trust you, you have no shot.
No, you don't. And sometimes that is the biggest hurdle, is building that with multiple different people, and the people that aligned their trust with maybe the people before you can be tough,
Yeah.
and I think the killer of any business or the growth and development is that's the way we've always done it.
Yeah.
The whole world is evolving around you. You need to change.
Yeah. Like accepting mediocrity and being stuck when everyone else is looking to the future, changing and
Right.
adapting. And if you're not, like
You're,
stasis is going to fail.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Yeah. So, we've talked about your lessons learned in leadership and some of it being from those kind of bad bosses, right? What do you think makes a bad boss? Like, I feel like I was a bad boss for years. It's one of the hardest things to do, to figure out how to support the success of other people. So
Right.
what makes a bad boss, and are they fixable?
I I really feel like a lot of it is insecurity. What I have seen is, maybe it's from a bigger population of people that I've witnessed, where I can see their bad leadership comes from their own insecurity, the insecurity of giving people permission to do things to maybe outshine you, to show their own growth might make you feel inferior, when building other leaders is kind of one of the greatest things we can do. Giving people a launching pad for their future career. I recently had a conversation with an employee, and I said, my 5-year outlook for you is that we are having dinner someplace, catching up on all the great things that your career has brought you, so that I can see that you've outgrown me.
Yeah,
That's what I want for my team.
right. Yeah, we want to create other leaders, not other followers.
No.
Yeah.
And I've
And
made that mistake. I think that was one of my big lessons learning on my own as I grew. I used to be a control freak. I figured it was easier for me to invest 80 hours a week doing every little thing, in, getting it done right, and, not nurturing and not growing and not delegating. And it caused a lot of burnout. It caused a lot of stress. And then it let a lot of people work for me that probably weren't doing enough because I was doing it all.
yeah, and they eventually get this, like, I call it leadership learned helplessness, where my leader's
Right.
just going to do everything and be controlling. So I'm going to throw my hands up.
Yeah.
Right. And some people will just quit. They're like, hey, you don't value me. You're not letting me do my job. You're not
Right.
letting me grow. I'm out of here.
Yeah. I mean, I had one of my employees actually say to me when I had left a position before, and said, I really feel like you left partly for burnout, and I wish you had trusted us more and gave us more things to take off your plate. And I mean, this person ended up being a very good friend of mine, but that's a big deal to say to a boss, and it was a tough pill to swallow.
And, you bring up a good point that a lot of us don't get the feedback we need and don't realize, we're not aware of what we're
Right.
doing that is not helpful to leadership. And no one wants to tell you because you're in a role of authority. It says catch 22.
Oh, yeah, for sure. I think one of the biggest things that I've learned and I've implemented is what help do you need from me and what can I do better to support you? And I think sometimes people have said, I really could use more one-on-one meetings with you so that I can ask more questions, or I wish you wouldn't come meet as much so that I can have a little bit more autonomy. And giving them the okay to say it's okay to give both positive and negative feedback. I don't want my employees to always be my biggest cheerleader if there's something that I'm not doing right. And I want them to know that it's a safe space to give me that.
Yeah. Well, and that is a lack of ego. That's a very secure psychology. And frankly, Bonnie, most people don't have that, right?
It took a while. I didn't have it. I didn't have it in my 20s. I certainly didn't have it in my 30s, maybe 40s, but
Yeah.
it's a lesson learned. And I think you have to humble yourself. But again, I think it was watching bad leaders never recognize. You asked me if bad leaders can change. I believe anybody can change, but they have to be able to see what needs to be changed and acknowledge and want it
And want it. They
and want
need
it.
the feedback, but then they also have to have a desire to
Right.
do the hard work of
Yeah.
changing.
And that's not easy. It's not. You have to, it's a lot of self-awareness.
It is. It is. I go and speak to these groups of people in the C-suite, very experienced, and I talk about how if you want to keep people motivated, you have to address their psychological needs. And we all have
Yes.
a need to be valued and supported and
Yep.
given enough autonomy. We all need that, right? And so in doing these talks, I say, when was the last time you asked the people that you lead what you could do better to support them?
Right.
Guess how many people raise their hands to that?
None.
Not right. And I
None.
have them all grab their pen. Ooh, what can I do better to support you? I never would have thought to say that. Right.
Right. No, it's so important. I teach my managers, say that to the people that come to you. When they bring you questions or when you find out there's something that is now on fire in your office that you weren't aware of, and you're like, how did this happen? Go to the source, talk to them, find out what's going on, and then ask them, what can I do better to support you through this? And then how do we prevent this in the future? And a lot of times what they've come to me and said is, they didn't think that they could tell me before it got this bad. I'm like, well, that's something that you now know that you can do to fix it. You have to be asking the questions ahead of time.
Yeah. Yeah. I call it those WTF moments for me in
Uh-huh.
leadership where like you finally the
Yeah.
fire gets to you and it's a
Uh-huh.
bonfire and we could have put it out when it was sparking, right? And we
Yep.
always have this kind of
Exactly.
like, how did we get here? And I realized,
Yep.
wait a second, just sincerely and compassionately ask what led us here. Help me to
Exactly.
understand what led us here. How can we prevent it? Bring them into the solution, right?
Yep.
But that insecure response is like, how the hell did we get here? Without any kind of compassion. You're blaming,
Yeah.
judging. And when you throw that energy at someone, of course, they're not going to tell you when things aren't going
Oh, no, 100%. They're either going to shut down or they're going to match your energy, which is never going to make it better.
well. Yeah. Yeah. And I've had that happen too. Maybe you
Uh-huh.
have as well.
Lesson learned.
Yeah. Yeah. So, talking about our own kind of growth as leaders, sometimes we look back in hindsight and realize we were actually our own worst enemy in a situation where we thought we were doing all the right things.
Oh,
And we
yeah.
can look back and say, you know what? I was the root cause of that problem.
Mhm.
Of course, problems are complex, right? But can you share one of those key learning moments where you realized you were maybe battling yourself, an old mindset, an approach, something you were doing that wasn't working? What did you learn and what did you carry forward from that?
I think absolutely, like I mentioned before, it's not delegating. It's not giving people the opportunity to help me and feeling that full need to control everything. And not because I was bossy or egomaniac, but just because I thought it was the easiest way to get it done. And what I ended up finding was now when things did need to get done, nobody would take autonomy or accountability for things. And they would always just pause and look at me. It was like a weaponized incompetence, sort of, well, nobody knows what to do because you always take care of it.
Mhm.
And I think, realizing that by slowing down and stopping and saying, yes, you can help me with this. And this is why. I think explaining the why and teaching that is so helpful because I had to internally look at the why. Like, why do I feel like this is my responsibility? I think some of it had to do with me learning that managerial role and just overseeing my first group of teams at the exact same time I was raising a young family. And I had three little kids. So as a mom, I was always responsible for getting the lunches ready and getting all that and keeping track of it. I think it just spilled over into the business. And I had a hard time maybe separating that I was working with adults and not children. And I think some of that also came as my kids got older, and I could say, you know what, you're going to start doing your own laundry. And hey, you know what, you're going to take over this project at the office because I shouldn't have to do everything all the time. I think it was probably a weird melding of my two worlds that I came to realize the same things at the same time.
Well, and I think some of the mistakes that we're inclined to make as parents are going to be the same ones that we make as leaders. And a
Oh,
lot
yeah.
of good parenting is good leading. So some of our own quirks and hangups that we have as parents,
Yep.
overdoing things for our kids, those follow us between parenting and leadership.
And it did. And I can definitely see the parallels between those different segments of my career. I mean, again, I was young and I was a young parent as well, but I do see that my growth and my change in visions as a manager and how I manage and lead changed the way I was leading at home as well.
Hmm.
So
Yeah.
I think that that is almost like a weird epiphany of sorts as we're even discussing it to find that correlation.
Yeah, definitely. Emotional intelligence is emotional intelligence, and that is part of what we're working on and helping others with. And I apply everything I learn and all of my research and geeking out on leadership. I use it with my son, and he's a
Oh,
resilient
yeah.
little kid.
Yep, exactly. I mean, I joke, I have four younger sisters, so I always joke that my interaction with people and learning how to navigate different personalities started at an early age.
Hmm.
But I think I've learned more things from raising my kids and just their three different learning styles and how they look and assess and approach things that it gives me a different outlook when I look at a team member in the face and I can see one of my children's approaches or personalities. And I think, wait a minute, I've overcome this already. I
Yeah.
know how to approach this candidate. I know that this is their motivator, or I know that this is their trigger. And so my kids have taught me more than probably any work experience has ever taught me to be able to manage people.
Yeah, yeah. And you care so much as a parent. You're willing to do whatever it takes to figure out
Yeah,
how to be the best parent. Right?
for
And when you
sure.
translate that to leadership and you care deeply and you really
Oh,
want to
for
help other
sure.
people grow and be successful, you figure it out.
Yeah, exactly.
Part of it is figuring out how to get out of our own way. So,
Every day.
yeah, yeah. So when you look at kind of the future trajectory of the
Mhm.
company, are y'all still trying to grow? And how is dentistry changing? What are you seeing as the needs of your leadership team and your culture now versus 5 years from now?
I think it's funny. We talk about growth all the time, but we don't want to grow. We're not in it to grow just to have a brand location on every corner. We're not trying to be a Starbucks or anything else. We always want to keep the value of what we're bringing to the patients what it is now. And it's not to have 50 or 60 locations or anything like that. It's to attract great doctors that care passionately about the patients. It's to develop teams around them. So when we talk about growth, we do look at where would be a good location. We don't want to be right in the middle of 52 different dental offices and you're competing for that type of thing. We want to make it functional. Where my team is, I think just the same as you and I talked about, we continue to grow in strength and skills every day. I think what we have is scalable. I think that we still grow and we're still making decisions in the company where we change resources or we use different tools and technologies, and that comes with its own learning curve. But I think we are positioned to grow and scale what we have to continue to do exactly what we're doing.
That's awesome. Yeah, that's a feat that a lot of companies never really get to. That's
Yeah,
yeah,
it's
that's
exciting.
it is. It is. Okay. So on a more personal note, if I could give you a time machine and you could go
Hmm.
back and talk to you 10 or 15 years ago, what advice would you have for your younger leadership soul?
I think probably the biggest lesson that I needed was for somebody to tell me that it's okay to say no to things. And saying no isn't necessarily rude. It's not disrespectful. It's not bad leadership. Sometimes it's just protecting your own personal space or your stress level. But I was definitely somebody that did not know how to say no. If you asked me to work 7 days a week, 42 hours a day, I would have done it. I would have found a way to magnify time and get it done. I think that learning to say no would have been a good one. And the other advice that I would give that girl is enjoy the ride.
Yeah, I think even like the book Lean In, I mean, there's a lot
Yeah,
of talk out there about like just man up, grit it
no,
out, right? And it's harmful. It's destructive to our
it
mental
is.
health, to our physical health. And I think people confuse grit with resilience. Grit is I'm just going to take the
Take
hits.
the
I'm going to say
hits.
yes to
Yep.
everything. I'm going to do whatever it takes. There are times for that.
Yes.
Sometimes you do need to just have grit, but that's not
Right.
resilience. That is not truly overcoming obstacles, innovating, learning, staying positive, and staying healthy.
Right. No, for sure. And I think, I would, again, I would say enjoy the ride because there's lessons everywhere and some of them are hard. And you don't learn the best things without the hardest lessons, I don't feel like. And, learning that I should have said no when I said yes to, yes, I will watch three of my employees' kids while they all go out to a concert one night, or, those types of things, because I didn't know how to say no. I felt like my nurturing side was to say yes and empower so many other things,
Yeah.
but no to projects or no to things, but also to trust the process and when to say yes. And sometimes, like you said, the grit and saying yes to things, it's about believing in yourself and taking the leap of faith and knowing when it's okay to walk away from something that isn't good for you, but to accept something that could be far greater.
Yeah. Yeah. It's sort of like the distinction of having self-discipline instead of grit. Like
Yeah,
I'm going to have the self-discipline to really look at the situation and be discerning about how I show
right,
up and where I set my boundaries. And I'm going to create a win for me and other people around me, but I'm not going to get walked on. I'm going to stay
right,
healthy. Yeah.
for sure.
Yeah. And it's ironic that in the healthcare industry, there's a lot of grit and burnout and unhealthy professionals and leaders who
Yeah.
aren't hearing that message.
No, for sure. Because a lot of times they're taught that that's not the way to do it. But I think
Hmm.
we have a real opportunity to help people find the work-life balance and still have grit.
Yeah. And that's,
Yeah.
if COVID taught us nothing else, it's that people will pretty much do anything to protect that work-life balance as much as they can. And I think that's
Yeah.
a healthy shift. Um, yeah, we're all going to pay a little bit more for our French fries or our fillings, but
Yeah. Right.
let's value our time and our lives and have some balance. And the fact that people are really demanding that now, I think is a healthy shift.
It is. It is. I'm actually seeing quite a few of my team members ask for more hours, which is kind of interesting. I don't know if it's economy based or not, but when I came to the company, we had a 4-day work week. Everybody, except for like most of our management, does like 4.5 days. But I have a lot of them saying, hey, I really want to be at 40 hours. That's how my budgets are done. And, we're finding ways to adapt, but this is something they're asking for and we're listening. So,
Yeah, that's great. I mean, you start with work-life balance and then adjust to the individual.
yep, exactly.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Well, Bonnie, thank you so much for sharing all these insights and for your authentic perspective. This is a lot of fun.
Yes, thank you for having me. This was great. And I loved the cathartic journey that we went on through this. It was nice.
Awesome. Thank you.